Welcome to NEXTGames Odyssey series. This video covering the Sheol Gaol NM Mboze. Now in this video we'll go over the Mboze battle strategy that I recommend, and then I'll show you two battle examples. One using a party setup, and the second one solo. We'll do all of this on the ninja job. Now Mboze is an enemy from the Ygrant family. He uses stone-based spells that hit for usually only about 500 to 1000 damage. He also uses Sloga, which can be devastating if it's used at the wrong time, especially around the time of an uproot. He is weak to slashing and wind damage. Now during the fight, a window for red stagger will open after the uproot ability is used. After this ability is used, the next skill chain done will cause a red stagger. You then need to continue that skill chain to a third step to cause a blue stagger. Also note that if the uproot ability is used again later on in the fight, you're now going to need to do an additional step in order to blue stagger. So now you will need to trigger red on the first skill chain, and then only after completing 2 more steps will you get the blue stagger and remove the aura. For ninja, I recommend the combo of 10 Kamu Shun for 3-step or 10 Kamu Shun Shun for a 4-step. Instead of standard attack rounds, Mboze has access to the following 3 abilities that he will use each time he is ready to attack. The first is Branch Poke, which is a single target, darkness-based breath damage attack that will drain your hit points. Branch Sweep, which is a conal physical damage ability and will give you evasion down. The last one is Branch Spin, which is a frontal conal damage ability that will also stun you. Next, let's go over Mboze's abilities. First one, Root of the Problem, is AoE damage and absorbs buffs and TP, will also inflict stats down. The next one is Firefly Fandango. This inflicts low damage, paralysis, flash, and max MP down. The next one, Potted Plant, inflicts low damage, binds, and slows. Now, Candle Pierce can be a devastating move, especially if there's only 1 or 2 people in range, as it will spread around a set amount of damage. This appears to be normally about 7000 damage on Vengeance 0. Note, some of this damage can be resisted or mitigated. I use Migawari to avoid this damage entirely. I suggest you do the same. Now, Uproot is the one you really got to watch for. It inflicts large amounts of light-based AoE damage, inflicts slow, and resets hate. Now this will open the red proc window, so since you potentially are slowed, it is critical that you let slow get erased and that you get hasted before attempting to skill chain and stagger with red, so that you can then continue to a 3rd or if necessary 4th step to blue stagger. If you have slow on you, it's going to be practically impossible to self skill chain. Obviously, the more people you add to your skill chain process, the less it's reliant upon a single person to do multiple skill chains, and therefore the less of a concern this is. The final move we have to talk about is easily the most devastating in all of Attonement 3, and it makes Mboze the most challenging Attonement 3 NM to go up against. It's called Timber. This sadly will do 4 to 10,000 damage to everyone within 20 feet. This damage cannot be mitigated in any way, so things like Migawari are completely out of trying to help you live through this. If you're solo, you're simply hoping he doesn't use this. If he does, you will die, and your run is over. Sadly, it's just that simple. I'd say you probably have about a 10 to 20% chance of him not using it if you kill fast enough. So just know that if you don't have a group, you can do slashing damage and a 3 or 4 step skill chain. You very well can solo this, as long as you have patience and willing to try it, anywhere from 1 to 10 times. Now if you're in a party, there are 2 current ways I can give you to deal with this fight and get past it. The first one is the one that we show an example of. It is bringing 2 tanks, 2 damage dealers that can do slashing damage, and a multi-step skill chain. And then the last 2 spots are filled with a healer and support. Everyone fights until 50% hit points. When one of the tanks and DDs leave, and the mages and support also make sure they're out of that 20-foot range at that point. The other tank DD remain in and doing as much damage as possible before the use of Timber. Once that is used, the backups run in, who should already have hate from that first 50%, and finish the fight. Also note that the abilities used can hit melee for a good amount of damage and quite possibly one-shot them, so make sure you plan a way to mitigate that damage, either through the use of gear sets with high amounts of magic evasion, or through support jobs that can help mitigate that damage. Another way you can approach this fight is to make sure you bring a summoner along and then once you hit 50%, just have your tank start kiting it in that big area down below. The summoner can get blood packs in when they can, and usually the tank can stay out of range of timber, and it's quite easy from what I'm told to land gravity. So all this makes for that age-old strategy of simply just kiting the monster around for that last 50% to get your damage in. For trust in this fight, I choose to use Arc EV to tank. Now August and Amchu will back her up if killed. We're using Arcelia for haste and AoE cures. Koru and King of Hearts will back her up if killed. We're using Sethus to restore HP and MP to the party. Now Joachim and Omiya will back Seth up if killed, but note, this means we will not be haste capped during this fight. Make sure you bring a dual wield 20 set. Monboro and Kupipi are who I'm using for cures. If either of them is to die, I'll summon Chirukiki. Also note that Yignis would be a much better replacement for Kupipi, but I don't have Yignis yet, so if you do, I would suggest Yignis in place of Kupipi, and you should probably have an easier time. Now let's take a look at our two battle examples. First the party setup, followed by the solo. And here we are on our party example. Tongi, as you'll see ahead of us there, is on Paladin and will be our primary tank. Vesicle and Uli are on Samurai and Dark Knight respectively, and are going to be going back and forth with their weapon skills to create multi-step skill chains. I will be also light skill chaining at the start, that is up until about 50% hit points when I'm going to get out, because they will all remain in and try and see if they can get as much damage as possible in before Timber is used. It is extremely important that you already have at least one, if not more, multi-step skill chains worked out before the fight, just in case something like what we just saw happens. Vesicle sadly went down. This is a lot of that AoE damage I was speaking of, where DDs can really take a lot of damage. So now, Vesicle and Uli can't multi-step. So I, fortunately, still have my 10 Camu Shun that we can use once Uproot is used. It's also important to note that all damage dealers that are fighting need to be paying attention for Uproot, and know that once it's used, only the people that are involved in the multi-step skill chain should be weapon skilling to make sure you get that aura down as quickly as possible. So at this point, the plan kind of shifts. We've had Vesicle go ahead and get out so that hopefully he can have weakness wear and actually be useful after Timber is used later on in the fight. Uli is going to stay in there and keep doing damage after 50%, and I'm just here right now getting as much hate as I can, doing as much damage as I can so that we can get it to that 50% number as quickly as possible. We are approaching it now, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of range, and we'll see how long we have until Timber is used. It's also important that you keep all the other mages and such out of range as well under 50%, otherwise they're going to fall victim to that Timber as well. While you are out of range, don't forget to do things like refresh your buffs, so that when it's time for you to run in there, you're ready to go and don't have to worry about those things then. We've been fortunate in that Uproot has not been used yet, so we've not entered a red stagger window. Note that it can be used at any time though, so you need to be ready for it. We've also just passed 50%, so Timber can be used at any time. So unfortunately, what you've just witnessed is the fastest usage of Timber that I have seen under 50%. So sadly, Tongi and Uli didn't really get a chance to do much there under that 50% number. At this point, I'm thinking the run might be a loss, but we want to keep it going. So at this point, I want to make sure that no one gets hit with the next use of Timber besides me. So they raise all of the dead, and I tell all of them to get far away, and I want to see how far I can take him down just solo. Hopefully it's far enough so that when I die to a Timber, they can take over. I of course still have Re-Raise and Megawari, so the intention was I could get back up, and we could hopefully, in some way, try and finish this fight. It thankfully was going so well that I decided to pop Meekage and see just how far I could take it. Enjoy the rest of the run. So at this point, we're under 10%. It looks like I might actually pull this off. I have a fresh Migawari up. I got shadows up. All I gotta do is keep weapon skilling. The only thing that's gonna stop me is the use of a timber. So close, so close. On the plus side, Vesicle has been getting ready just for this type of occurrence, and is nice enough to come in at the end and finish off that last 2% for the win. Now, there were a lot of things that went very poorly in that fight. There's also a lot of things that went well in the fact that Uproot was never used, and I've only seen that happen twice now. Now let's go ahead and see what a solo battle example looks like, and that does show you an example of both the red and blue stagger. Sadly, here at the end, I am just completely unable to get a multi-step skill chain off due to all of this paralyze. It inevitably leads to my downfall in a timber right here at 12%. Once again, so close, so close. Sadly, I didn't have a vesicle to run in and save this run. That's going to be it for episode 14 and how to take on Mboze. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy out there.